Hi, 80s TV Ladies listeners. Before we get to the episode, we want to take a moment to address the June 24th Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. This decision stripped away the right to have a safe and legal abortion for millions of people in this country. Restricting access to comprehensive reproductive care, including abortion, threatens the health and independence of all Americans. This decision could also lead to the loss of other rights. To learn more about what you can do to help, go to podvoices.help. That's podvoices.help, H-E-L-P. We encourage you to speak up, take care, and spread the word.
Welcome to 80s TV Ladies with your hosts, Susan Lambert-Haddam and Sharon Johnson. Let's get on with our show.
Oh, it's fun to be a mom and it's fun to be a spy. It's fun to be a spy and a mom. It's fun to be a mom and it's fun to be a spy. It's fun to be a spy and a mom.
Hello, we're back. I'm Susan Lambert-Haddam, Scarecrow and Mrs. King. We're going to keep going with it. I'm never letting this show go. I'm going to keep talking about it for a few more episodes.
And I'm Sharon Johnson. As Susan mentioned, we're going to be continuing our discussion about Scarecrow and Mrs. King. And today we're going to be focused on Season 2.
Season 1 was very exciting. For those that are just joining us, Scarecrow and Mrs. King was a television show that starred Kate Jackson and Bruce Boxleitner. It was an action comedy, a romantic comedy as well, about spies. We want to recap a little bit about Season 1. Scarecrow is Lee Stetson, codenamed Scarecrow. He is a spy, an international spy, and he has to team up with Mrs. King, who is just an American housewife from Arlington, Virginia. And it's interesting. We're going to come back to the word housewife because I have something to say about it. But she has 2 kids, and she sort of stumbles into helping Scarecrow on an assignment and then ultimately ends up pairing with him in an unlikely partnership, mostly enforced by their new boss, Billy Melrose, played by Mel Stewart. Their relationship becomes definitely more friendly as Season 1 goes on. Early on, Scarecrow does not want to be partnered with Mrs. King because he thinks that she's trouble. But as the season progressed, he comes to admire her skills, her friendship, and she surprises almost everyone with her kindness and ingenuity because she brings those special housewife skills. By the way, she is divorced. So why she's constantly described as a housewife? Is that because she's married to the house?
Very good question.
But in Season 2,
we continue the adventures of the divorced suburban housewife and mother of 2. Also, her mother lives with her as well for reasons that I don't think are ever really explained.
To help take care of the kids, I think, is, to basically be the housewife so that Amanda can go off and be a spy and have a job.
Unbeknownst to her mother.
I just want to note that during this season, Amanda threatens to leave in one episode, and like several episodes later, she actually leaves. But those are kind of nicely booked in. When she threatens to leave, it startles and upsets Lee because they've clearly got a partnership started, whether it's romantic, whether it's just friendship. He is startled. But he's dismissing her because that's sort of the habit he's gotten into because she's just a housewife and she's messed up something, but really hasn't been her fault, which is sort of every episode, right?
Right.
But anyway, so I thought it was interesting when she actually leaves in like kind of the second to last episode for a new job. It's for money reasons. She wants to get paid more. She gets offered this great job. Of course, it turns out she's working for criminals and that never works out well. So she doesn't have that job in the end. She gets to come back to the agency with a little tiny raise. So that's great. So I thought that was interesting because it definitely is something that is repeated in these sort of buddy comedy and romantic comedy shows. You've got to keep kind of breaking up and putting back together your partners.
But I also like the reason they give for her wanting to leave, that she's basically saying, I'm worth more. I need more. I'm going to go get more. And if you guys can't do that, then I think I will go somewhere else.
I think what's nice is when she does leave the second time, it sort of is one of those things where the relationship has developed, where he really honors it. He doesn't want her to go, but he's like actually supportive or trying to be supportive of her choices, even though he wants her to come back. They spend a lot of time in Europe in this show. So there are 5 episodes that are set in Europe, in London, Germany, and Austria. And I believe they were shot in those locations. They were definitely shot in London and Germany. And I'm pretty sure shot in Austria as well. And that is kind of a big deal. Like they basically said, let's go Europe, and went. And it sort of really adds a lot of dimension to the show. And I think that was the special effects of the day, right? Nobody had digital effects. So you either used flipping cars or going to exotic locales to be your special effects.
And one of the reasons I liked it as well is in much of the first season, Amanda kept getting involved in cases that had elements that were part of her life as a divorced housewife in Arlington, Virginia, be it people she knew or organizations she was aware of or worked through. But this was something where she was able to, help work cases using her skills or the skills she was developing in her role, which I thought was great.
The first one, she's like sent accidentally. The agency arranges for her family to win a trip to Europe, and they don't tell her. And then once she's there, Lee shows up, Scarecrow shows up, and it's like, oh, great. No, really, you're here to work for us. So her family's there in Europe with her for that episode, which is kind of nice, but then not for the others. Then she gets to go on her own on actual real assignments. They actually get some nice guest stars this season. One of my favorites is Jean Stapleton, whom I'm a big fan of. Jean Stapleton is, of course, most famous for her role as Edith in All in the Family, which ran in the 70s, pretty much all of the 70s. I think it was like 1970 to 1979. And she was married, of course, to Archie Bunker and was kind of a beat-up housewife in a lot of ways. Not physically, but emotionally.
Yeah, I mean, and I think for most people, Edith Bunker was what they associated with Jean Stapleton. So the idea that she would go from that to playing an international spy, I'm sure they were beside themselves at the time with being able to pull that off, casting-wise.
She plays Lady Emily Farnsworth, and she's first introduced in, I think, the second or third episode, The Legend of Das Geiterschloss. And I'm not sure I pronounced that right, but I gave it a good try.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. And that's where Lee and Amanda must save the life of an important British agent, Emily Farnsworth. And Amanda meets Emily. And what I like about it is it's sort of a little bit of lady power going on here too. She is a very respected agent. She is Lee Stetson's mentor. She trained him. He has a lot of respect for her. He clearly, basically allows her to kind of it to be her case in the times when it is her case. He kind of steps back and says, "What do you want to do?" And she really respects Amanda, even though Amanda is clearly the newbie. And yet there's also a lot of fun of Lee working with his mentor again. And it was just kind of fun. That was a really fun part. But then, of course, when she comes back in one of the episodes called 3 Faces of Emily, this time she's on American soil. And this one was, I thought, one of my favorite episodes only because of Jean Stapleton.
Same.
Because she basically plays, the British agent, Lady Farnsworth. Then we find out during the episode, she kind of reveals to Amanda that she's actually American, and that, so she's got this whole other side of her. She gets to do 2 accents. Then she gets to do a 3rd accent and play an entirely different character, basically playing a KGB, very high agent.
And she was so good in this role. I don't think they had the guest actor Emmy that at that point, I think it got added some years later, that category, because if it had been there, then if she didn't win it, something was desperately wrong.
She would have been nominated because she just chews it up in her role as a KGB agent. She is having a ball. That episode had a lot of great little gags in it because they're using Amanda's house because the safe house they were going to bring him to has no electricity. The power went out, apparently, which is kind of a funny gag. Francine sitting in the dark with a candle going, "Don't come here." And so, oh my God, the only house we can go to is Amanda King's house. And thankfully, once again, her mom and kids are away for the weekend.
Well,
always works out that way. That's why Mom is living with her. That's one of my favorite of this season. And then also love Ship of Spies, but I love it for another reason, because once again, I'm a sucker for the romance in this show. And this is a favorite of many fans out there, because of course this is the one where, in order to track down the agent that's disappeared, they have to go on the next cruise where that agent was. And it turns out it's the honeymoon cruise where they have to get married. And Ship of Spies was the episode that was named in the Emmy nomination for costuming. And there's a lot of crazy costumes going on in season 2. This was another thing that also, when we get to Remington Steele, and we will be covering Remington Steele in later episodes, we are going to see a lot. We're going to have to talk about costuming, because the 80s were crazy, and they were putting these stars in pretty crazy costumes, particularly Amanda King, because she's a housewife, and then she has to dress up and go to a fancy embassy party. And then she has to get married on a cruise ship island. Yeah. But they're also putting Lee Stetson in crazy costumes, in some fancy suits, and then some crazy suits, then some plaid suits. There's an episode in this season where he's wearing 1 or 2 ascots. Like, he's wearing an ascot.
Well, spies have to do what spies have to do.
He's not even a spy at that time. They're on like a weekend getaway. Pretend. There's a lot of that trope of pretending they're a couple, which is always fun.
Well, speaking of the Emmy Awards, the other shows that were nominated in their category were something called Wallenberg, A Hero's Story, which won. The Execution and the Jesse Owens Story, all were nominated in that category.
In the 80s, you really start to see the Emmys really shouting out the ladies of the 80s. I think that year was also the year that Cagney and Lacey won Best Drama Series, and 3 other awards. It was the top award getter. The Cosby Show was the most nominated, and the Golden Girls won Best Comedy. And the funny thing about the Golden Girls, it won Best Comedy for several years. Mm-hmm. And almost every year that it was nominated for Best Comedy, all 3 women from the show were also nominated in the Best Actress section. So they took up 3 slots of like the 5 available slots for Best Actress in a comedy series. And it was always Betty White, B. Arthur, and Rue McClanahan. And then I think that year Betty White won. But I think they each won one.
That sounds right.
We're going to have to look it up. We're going to have to look it up.
Research.
What I also like about that year is the Best Outstanding Drama Special was a TV movie called Love Is Never Silent, about a child of deaf adults, played by Mare Winningham, who basically, and it follows her. It's based on a book written by a woman, based on a book written by a woman, and produced by a woman. So it was written by Darlene Cravato, and produced by Dorothea Petrie, who is a multiple Emmy Award-winning producer. Okay, enough about the Emmys. We got to go back to the shows, to season 2. So did you have any other standout episodes or interesting episodes for you?
I like that there wasn't, at least not yet, a lot of emphasis on, the whole will they or won't they kind of thing that creeps in later seasons. And I like the way that we see Lee's respect for Amanda progressing as she gets involved in more and more cases, as she starts training, et cetera.
But I think you're right. It kind of grows up this season a little bit. And I think it is probably the most solid of the seasons, just all the way through, because that relationship, it actually seems to put more emphasis on the friendship than it does the romantic element.
Well, especially as Amanda's, I think, still trying to determine maybe how deeply she really wants to go into this. Obviously, she still has her kids to consider. She can't be taking off to Europe or other parts unknown at a moment's notice all the time because of her family obligations. But still, she's found that she's enjoying this world and she's good at it. And is really kind of still feeling her way a little bit, which I think is great.
the fun thing is the other guest stars that show up in this season. So we see John Rhys-Davies, who's not really in his early career at the time. He's, again, I would say at a level of Gene Stapleton. And he is in Affair at Broomfield Hall, which is one of the European episodes. He's playing a lord that gets entangled with Amanda, but also in Car Wars, the episode Car Wars, one of the bad guys is played by Michael Richards, and it's really funny to see him playing a bad guy.
Yeah, it's and as you said, that is one of the fun things about going back and watching these shows, and that was one of the times where I really went, Michael Richards.
Yeah, what is he doing there? He looks pretty young.
He does, definitely. But he was good. I mean, it's not like he was very good in it. So, and then the following episode had a character actor that everybody has seen in all sorts of things, David Paymer, who was terrific as always. He was playing someone who works in the accounting / finance area of the agency, trying to get people to do what they're supposed to do in terms of filling out reports and expense reports and all sorts of things like that. And of course, everybody's like, yeah, we don't care. But it was another one of those, I know who that is. I know that guy.
And then that episode was DOA, Delirious on Arrival. A little spin on the DOA, but there've been 2 movies, Dead on Arrival, but this is Delirious on Arrival, because what happens, right, is Amanda basically loses her mind. She eats Lee's sandwich, which was poisoned. So she is unraveling during this episode, which allows for a lot of physical comedy from Kate Jackson. This is the episode, I think, the episode that was nominated for an Emmy.
Yes, for cinematography. Yes.
And so, but it is pretty funny. The interesting thing is her personality sort of shifts, and she becomes very good at being a spy. She becomes kind of like, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And at one point, she wields a hairdryer as a gun, and she's like, but she's sort of taking charge in a lot of ways that is very different from her personality in the show, where she is still nervous and about being a spy and still thinks she's sort of got to hang back. And, and it's played for comedy, but it's also like an interesting side to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's in most shows, it's always good to see when actors get a chance to maybe do a slightly different take on their calendar, their character, and kind of see where they can take it.
The entire season is run by Juanita Bartlett, who has brought on a lot of writers and some directors from the Rockford Files, which is where she was on before she came onto the show in the middle of season 1. And so I think there's a little bit of Rockford influence in a couple of episodes I see. And one of them is in Car Wars. It's not so much that it's lighthearted. It is. I mean, but the whole show is. But there's something, it starts to be very charactery. You get in Car Wars, Amanda's car doesn't work. It basically gets in an accident because of the agency. So the agency has to provide her a car. And so the agency car mechanic guy is kind of in there, kind of battling with Lee about which car she's going to get, or if she's going to get a car. And then they finally end up giving her this like super fancy car that basically, of course, belongs to the mob because it was used in spies, and
it was the only car they had that had automatic. That was automatic as opposed to manual, and she can't drive a manual car, so they had to give her that car instead. So.
And it becomes a lot of trouble in that car.
Yes,
so of course it does. but there's some charactery things going on there that feel very Rockford. You could actually, like the agency guy that runs the car impound could be right out of a Rock. It could be Rockford arguing for a car with that guy. And then the other one that feels very Rockford is our man in Turgnacy. One guy really got to look up how to pronounce these. Turgnacy. No? All right, Melissa, any thoughts? All right, she's going to check on it. Amanda has been sent on a simple assignment to Europe on her own, right? No Lee. She does the assignment very well, but apparently on her way to the airport, picking up some souvenirs for her kids. She pays with what turns out to be counterfeit money. And so she is arrested. So the episode starts with Lee having to walk away from his, fancy, cool weekend date and fly to Europe to pick her up and get her out of a Germany jail and a German jail. And I think that's very funny. But when he arrives, he's really angry at her. Mm-hmm. And on one hand, you're like, okay, it's been a while since Lee's been angry at her. So you're like, it's a little bit out of character. But if you think of it as a Rockford episode and Rockford has shown up to bail out his dad or one of his buddies who's constantly or Angel, who is constantly getting it, then you understand the whole scene. There's a character in that episode that sort of likes Amanda. That's the police officer for the German government. And there's a lot of richness in even the background that I think is appreciated. And I do like in season 2, Francine and Amanda get a couple episodes where they get to be respectful. And in particular, there's an episode where basically at the end of the episode, Amanda saves the day and Francine is really effervescent in her praise for Amanda. She's basically like, you did a fantastic job. You're amazing. Like it's really, she's sort of come full circle about Amanda. And then in seasons 3 and 4, even though she still has her snark, because that's her character, she actually also has a friendship and a respect for Amanda.
I think it makes all kinds of sense, though, because I think she's coming from the same place initially that Lee was, in that she's gone through all this training. She has all this experience, Francine, and here comes this woman who has none of that. And why is she involved? And also got to remember the 80s was still a time when women were trying to find a place of respect for their work in the workplace. And I kind of get it, what her skepticism and the time it took for her to get to a place of respect to develop respect for Amanda, because kind of the same thing that Lee went through. I think it sort of mirrors that. She
does not have any experience, and suddenly she's being sent on these very big assignments. And originally it's because no one would suspect her.
Right.
And they need somebody who can pass as a American housewife. And Francine can't possibly do that because she's too sophisticated. And we do need to talk about sort of the ladies' hair. There's a lot of hair, big hair. Francine's got crazy 80s hair through all the seasons. As does Amanda, but less so. She's got mostly the same hairstyle the whole time, except for in season 2. And let me tell you, the fans of this show like to refer to this season as hair don't. Because they are so upset. In the middle of the season, Amanda cuts her hair, or maybe Kate Jackson cut her hair. It's very unusual to change hairstyles in the middle of a season for an actress, but she does. And the hairstyle goes short. It goes very professional. I think it's a very professional 80s look. But man, it completely throws off the character. And I think for the fans, they really hate the hairstyle. I think nobody likes it because by the end of the season, she's basically grown back her hair and has gone back to long hair Amanda King.
It sounds like a precursor to the whole Felicity haircut gate that happened in the 90s.
Oh my God, I think you're right. It is exactly that. When she cut her hair too.
Yes. How dare women cut their hair? How dare women change their hair?
But then there's a couple of fans that have speculated that because Kate Jackson actually got divorced from her second husband in December of 1984, in the middle of the season, that perhaps it was really just a Kate Jackson, I need to change my life. I can only imagine that if she showed up after the Christmas break, everybody went, oh my God, what are we going to do?
And as a producer, she said, about what?
Yeah. And they said, never, it looks great. Here's some giant earrings to go with that short haircut. Because let me tell you, the earrings get really big right then, and it is not a good look. Even I cannot handle the big giant earrings with the short haircut.
Well, it's an era that quickly passed, so
Big hair, big giant earrings.
Or at least for Kate Jackson in the show.
Big shoulder pads. Hair, very important. Lee's hair. A lot of talk in the fandom world about Lee's hair and which way Lee's hair was combing.
It's interesting how fans get up in arms about such things, I guess. I don't know. In television in ways that they don't in other medium. When people make a change like that, maybe it's everything to do with the fact that television's in your house and these people are visiting you on a weekly basis. I don't know, but
it feels personal.
Yeah.
If you've grown to love a character a certain way, it's very personal if that character changes something that is iconic about them. And hair for women in particular is iconic.
Yeah.
It's true. There was another speculation about the haircut that it was done to make it easier for the stunt woman to double Amanda. Now, I don't think shorter hair makes it easier for a stunt person to double somebody. So I'm not sure that I would think that would be top of my list as a reason. But it does remind me of the fact that the stunts in the show, again, season 2, pretty solid stunts happening. There's in particular in Ship of Spies, this crazy car chase and car wreck that seems physically irresponsible because it was all done by real actors, stunt people jumping out of moving cars and then landing very hard. It doesn't seem safe. But the other thing that has been noted, and you can look for in the episode Life of the Party at the end, this is the Amanda Francine go undercover as maids, which is very fun because Amanda knows how to clean a toilet and Francine is incapable of it, but has to. And Amanda ends up saving everyone, earning both Francine's approval and more Scarecrow's approval. But it's notable also for one of the infights for what fans like to call Man-cine, where Francine is clearly doubled by a male stunt person in some of the fight scenes because she gets very broad. And, so if you want to check that out, that's definitely one of the episodes where it's pretty obvious that there's a man in a dress punching somebody out.
And the big hair probably helps to disguise somewhat. So
I think the big hair helps. Yeah. All right. I think we're going to have to take another little break.
I think so.
All right. But this has been fun.
It's fun to be a mom and it's fun to be a spy. It's fun to be a spy and a mom.
So, Sharon.
Yes.
We're at the point in we have a new segment for the show and new guests, and I'm really excited. We're going to call it, because they came up with this themselves, 90s TV babies, because these are the young people who were not around in the 80s. They didn't see these shows when they first aired, unlike some people who are wise in the ways of television. So I want to invite Sarita Robinson, Megan Rubel, and Sergio Perez to join us. Hi, guys. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So we have tasked them with watching the pilot of Scarecrow Mrs. King and one other episode. They can watch more if they wanted to. And we want to know what they think. But first, I want them to, before we dive in, I want the listeners to hear a little bit about you guys. Let's start with Sarita.
Hi, I am Sarita Fontanesi. Susan has known me since I was Robinson, so I really love that throwback. It's much easier to spell.
I'm so sorry. I did get that wrong.
No, I really do. That's how you know you're a real one. Do you know the maiden name? But I am currently based in Austin, Texas. I work in progressive politics and activism here in Austin. And when I am not screeching into the void, I typically can be found on my couch with my 12-year-old dog watching trash TV, a lot of reality TV. We're Real Housewives fans in this home, or at the local Lowe's. I am starting to become very familiar with the staff there because I'm usually in every weekend buying something for some project that I am in the midst of, which my husband super loves. And that's me.
That's fantastic.
All right. Who's next?
I can go next. Being a local celebrity at the Lowe's is a total vibe. That's just, I'm so proud of you. Is that weird to say?
Honestly, thank you. Honor.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So hi, my name is Megan. I live in the wild city of North Hollywood, California. Yeah, crazy, insane. I describe myself when I'm trying to be succinct as like just a general creative type. Who likes doing creative things and making creative things happen. Television wise, I super love like a lot of television shows from the 60s and 70s. I actually grew up watching a lot of those shows. And I'm also super into 90s animated shows and the recent throwback shows that have started that are throwbacks to those 90 animated shows, like the reboot of DuckTales, which is brilliant. Yeah, that's me.
Well, hi, Megan.
Welcome, Megan.
Welcome. I'm Sergio. I am a recent college graduate, class of 2020, peace. It's 2022, and that's wild to me that I've been graduated in a pandemic. I'd say that I'm also just the general creative type. I love to cook. I love to read and write. I'm all around that. TV-wise, I would say I am on all those streaming services. We're talking HBO Max, Netflix, Hulu even. Like all of that. Just love seeing what's out and what everyone's talking about. It's not like me trying to be relevant or anything. It's just like, I want to see what all the buzz is about. And if it's not for me, it's not for me.
All right.
Great.
Well, I'm gonna also just say I've known Sergio. I've known the least, Sarita the most. And Megan. So I have guesses.
And I'm just right.
You're just
And this one's too warm.
You guys are all just right. I'm very excited, but I have guesses on what you're going to say. But I'm not going to tell you because, but I'm excited to hear what
Can you give us like a report card at the very end where you're like, oh, actually you did hit this point that I thought you would.
Okay. Yeah.
You could pull up a rubric. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I never got off the
Here are all
gold
my
star
notes.
system.
I've got all these notes. All right. So they're going to tell us what they think of Scarecrow Mrs. King based on the pilot episode. And what was the episode I gave you?
13.
That I have
13.
not ever. Yeah.
The Amnesia.
Yes.
A classic.
Love an amnesia.
You can't go wrong with an
Love a
amnesia
loss.
episode.
I especially love an amnesia episode where they remind you every 5 minutes.
Amnesia.
Yes.
Welcome to the
We
80s.
know. Honestly, I'm not convinced. You keep bringing it up.
I wasn't convinced that she got amnesia from that car wreck. It didn't seem that tragic.
The math
Like,
wasn't mathing. Like,
was
I'm
not.
not a doctor.
I'm out. You guys are going to go.
I'm going to start off by saying just like, I really loved it. Like I watched 2 of the required episodes. I'm going to go watch more because I liked it and I want more of it. So that's my like first overarching general thought is sold, going to go back for more.
It was
Yeah.
like, it felt very like classic, like 80s television. We've got a formula. We've got our lead. We've got like love interest immediately off the bat. You know who he is. And like, it was giving me a little like mellow Murphy Brown kind of vibes.
Oh, interesting.
Like, if like Murphy got like a Xanax from time to time, she could be Mrs. King. Maybe I'm just conflating single white women. I don't know.
She's not single. She's got Dean.
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 Oh, Dean.
Like, and that's the thing. Like, again, classic formula. We've got like a technically single gal who's like romantically involved. It only goes one of 2 ways. Either she's terrible at love, can't keep a man, or she's like kind of unhappy in a relationship. And like, here comes this like outside person to shake things up. But it really, ladies, you got 2 options.
I think it is kind of cool though, because like, especially just looking at the pilot, like zoning in on the pilot, you have this woman who is so much more than her circumstances. Like Dean doesn't seem to be a bad guy. He's just kind of like the quote from My Big Fat Greek Wedding. He's toast. He's toast. He's just toast. He's like boring toast.
Yeah, I'm not anti-Dean, but also I'm like, Who?
Yeah. And like, she seems like she's a cool mom, but like there's more to her than her circumstances. And so her being dropped into this like wild spy world is an exciting concept, because you're like, yeah, this woman is going to step up. This woman is absolutely going to thrive in this circumstance because she needs more. She is more, so she needs more.
Mm-hmm. And what's
fun.
His name? The Scarecrow was absolutely terrible at his job. He's the worst spy. I was watching it with Megan. We were just watching, and every time he'd do something, we're like, as a spy, he probably shouldn't just be running around a train station like that.
Okay,
causing a scene.
Maybe the most unbelievable part of the show, or maybe the thing that dates it. Obviously, this is a show that did not have true crime podcasts left and right everywhere. There's no Law and Order SVU yet. So a strange man walking up to me at a train station being like, take this package and get on a train and give it. Absolutely not. Get away from me. I have 12 keys between every finger. These nails are so that I can collect DNA should anything go wrong. Like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Also, like the fact that he just gets out of everything because he's handsome. Like he's a bad spy. Sergio and I narrowed it down to he's like Nathan Fillion and Michael J. Fox had a child.
Yeah.
He felt kind of like a Get Smart also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, just kind of like this quirky, kind of awkward, but somehow it always works guy that is a spy, and technically he gets his job done. I just wouldn't say that he does it well. If we're doing like a performance review, I might have some room for improvement.
He's on the chopping block, actually.
He
is. He underperforms like very consistently in every episode we watched him in. We only watched 2 episodes with him in it. He's in all of them, but
it was the same formula. He underperforms. He screws something up. She saves his butt.
Yeah,
there's drama, there's tension, and then it's all fine.
Yeah, that helicopter moment. First of all, that was thrilling. I really enjoyed that. Watching them in the helicopter, just spinning around somewhere up in Santa Clarita, where it's supposed to be like Virginia. Like that was fantastic. I was like. These days, that would be CGI. That would all be like a green screen, whatever, but practical.
Yeah,
Loved it.
I feel like with when they remade Hawaii Five-0 with like modern CGI and stuff, you lose a little bit of the real fear because there weren't special effects. Like at some point they were up in a helicopter, making it work, making TV magic. And so there is a real element of like, oh, this could go left. Like this.
Yeah.
This is a little shaky, a little dicey.
It's also just the visual gag of the helicopter backing up and then the helicopter going forward. Like, oh, yes. Give me that visual gag. Perfect.
Being followed by who is essentially a Rachel Ray in a station wagon.
Not a Rachel Ray.
Carrying a gun.
Okay. Watching this, there is one story from whatever. There's one thing that I cannot get out of my brain, and it's from similar era. Well, I guess maybe a little bit before. Anyways, my husband's grandfather, very Italian, Fontanesi. He's a retired oral surgeon. So they lived well, the Fontanesis had 2 sons. And after he married his wife, my husband's grandmother, she, obviously is taking over the responsibilities of the home and whatever, being the homemaker, and, decides that she wants to get better at cooking. Like she's like an okay cook. Like she's not bad, but similar to what we see in the show of I got to watch my cooking program, whatever. Except these people, Michael's grandfather paid for his grandmother to study at the Cordon Bleu.
Oh.
So that she could make food for their 2 sons to take to school every day. There's... And I could not get that out of my head watching this show because the disrespect of women always consistently. I'm going to go basically become a professional chef so that I can make tin lunch boxes to send my children with that they're only going to eat half of and forget on the counter half the time because kids are disrespectful first and foremost. Like, so we've got this Rachel Ray wannabe in the back.
Yeah.
Can we talk about her as a villain though? Because I was very into it.
I was
the little code system they had. You're going to Paul Revere's Peaches. And what do you know who the leaker is? No. Great. 1 hour. Like, what is that? Who in the writer's room was like, the idea is every part of a recipe is information relevant to what these foreign countries are trying to do to us.
Honestly, brilliant.
I want to see just like a clip show of like people trying these recipes at home and them going horribly wrong because they can't work. Just like all of these like terrible recipes that are just code.
Can you picture Ina Garten? Just
that's who it is. It's Ina Garten. Her husband at home.
Who like is a retired like stockbroker or something. Like she will like work in finance. Yeah, she like had a massive career in like finance and then was just like, well, I've made a bunch of money and I'm pretty over this. And my passion has always been cooking. So her and Jeffrey, they got their little house and that's how she became the Barefoot Contessa.
Barefoot Contessa.
I mean, there's obviously some more details in the middle, but that's her backstory.
That's about what we need.
Yeah, that's all you need to know.
That's all we need to know about.
So, and also like that backstory on the lady in the show.
So in the inevitable reboot of Scarecrow and Mrs. King, because that's all we can do now.
Right.
Yeah.
Ina Garten is playing
oh my God.
Yes, playing the KGB villain in the first episode. That was the other thing that came up as we were watching it is you can date frequently shows by what country the villains are from. And like the KGB Russian in the pilot episode being so on the nose of like, oh, yep, this is where we are in the time.
Red Scare.
Yeah.
Red Scare.
I mean, do we ever get tired of being mad at Russia for something?
We're kind of like back around to it.
Truly, you know, throwback. Vintage. This is such a vintage villain.
Yeah.
Big men in trench coats following you around in a Cadillac. What is that?
Which, like, what a flex for your like villain car to be a Cadillac that gets like 2 miles to the gallon. Like, are you just at the gas station all day? Like, my grandma drove a Lincoln Town Car, which when I was like little was already 16 years old. So like, it was powder blue with velvet blue interior and like barely seat belts. And like me and my sisters would just kind of roll around in the back seat because it's basically a playroom as she drove us around town running errands. The city of Houston, just this little Lincoln with the silver like spoilers and everything. A look.
I need that show right now with
this
your grandmother solving crimes.
I mean, she kind of was because she was a retired like research physician and in her retirement did business taxes for different businesses. So she would buckle us into the buckle. I say barely. We'd roll around the back seat as she would drive around to her different businesses to pick up their receipts and stuff. And her biggest client was a seafood market. So that's where we would end because then they would make us fresh food. And honestly, it was a great day. Like, I was like, oh yeah, let's go get them receipts. I'm ready. Like,
I'm so jealous.
I have been middle-aged for a long time, you guys. I want to put on my loafers, get in the Lincoln Town Car, and pick up the receipts.
Go to the seafood market. Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh my God. All right. Now I have to ask you, okay, a couple of questions. Is this show feminist? Scarecrow Mrs. King.
If I can go first, I think so. And my primary arguments for that would be you have a cast of women, at least I'm going to exclusively look at the pilot for this, right? You have a cast of women that are all very different and have made different choices with their life and fall different morally. And like, one of the things I think that we get wrong sometimes with feminist art today is that it's like, oh, we have to all be the now trademarked strong woman. And it's like, cool, that's great, love her. But that's not all of us. And it doesn't need to be. And so seeing a diversity of women, seeing not an incredible diversity of age. Her mom, I'm like, that's not a grandmother. That woman is like 40. And like, it was very hot. Anyways, yeah, like super hot grandma. I'm into it. Anyways, like you have an age range, you have women who have made different choices with their life, and all of them, none of them to me feel two-dimensional. There's some of them that feel like they have a tropiness to them, but I'm going to forgive that for the time period. Also, all of the men in her life, because she doesn't have a dad figure, because she's divorced, and because she's only dating Dean, will only be said that way by me. All of the men in her life she chooses for them to be there. Scarecrow gets kind of forced on her for a second, but then she chooses that relationship after. And I think that's really cool too. She can break up with her boyfriend. She can walk away from this job. She can walk away from him. And there's no influence that is like directly forced on her. So I'd say it is, with some like caveats given for time period.
I will use the other episode that we watched. I mean, is it like intersectional? No, like
by far.
Okay, just more white ladies doing white lady things. That's fun.
Just only white lady feminism.
Yeah, always have to add that asterisk. Which, if we review A Different World, I'm there. I'm ready. I already have watched it 4 times, so I'm ready.
It's on the list. We're doing it.
Okay, great. Whitley, I've got a dissertation. Anyways, but I do think that this is like solid for its time feminist representation. And the reason why I will use the other episode that we watched is because the whole issue within her personal life is that she missed this lunch with Dean's family, and they have nothing but snotty comments of oh, is she often disorganized or late, or Dean naturally knows to be a good person, blah, blah, blah. But she missed it because she's being this badass spy and espionage, and to your point earlier, Megan, of he's always messing up. Scarecrow is a problem. It's a little bit of Archer, but Archer at least can do his job. He just is a mess also.
Can he? Can he though?
Technically does.
Yeah.
Lana does have to help out a lot. But Archer technically can do things and be of value from time to time. Scarecrow is just a hot mess always. Oh, I was getting intelligence, but then the massage just kept going and I fell asleep. You have a job in your world. Russia is about to send a bomb, take over at any moment, and you fell asleep during a massage. Only a man. And she is often given credit much to his annoyance of well, if it weren't for her, you would have had this problem or that problem or whatever. And so I do appreciate how much they validate and honor the work that she's doing. And then also his assistant, and the mom can be problematic, but she also still will stick up for her daughter and be no, she's cool. She's a good person. You and Dean can pipe down. So that's nice. That's appreciated.
Yeah. In the 2 episodes that we watched, she literally piloted the aircraft because Scarecrow was too, twice. She piloted the helicopter. She piloted the nerve gas airplane that was going to release just everything over the community. The other thing, they got the nerve gas from a laboratorio. And I was like, whoa. If I had forgotten that you were a vaguely Latin American, like, revolutionary, I just remembered. Thank you. Every time. The posters and everything were very in your face about it. But that being said, I think that, I mean, like, I know that you've brought us in for, like, what is it, like, how does it stack up today? And I think that the saturation of media today is very sanitized in a way where it's like we're trying to be too woke to the point where it's contrived and things don't feel real anymore. And so when you watch, like, I really enjoyed Scarecrow and Mrs. King, the pilot. I was like, this is fun. This is fantastic. Like, to answer your question, it felt pretty solid. Like, I don't know, you show me something today, it's just, I'm probably going to be bored with it because of how, like, look at how she can beat this guy up, but that's all she does. And it's annoying.
Will she ever find love fighting all of these men?
She can balance both, but she's not going to be good at it. Like, what?
So I'm going to let you, like, I just, earlier today, I was doing my research and I'm always looking for like texts, right? And I found somebody's dissertation from 1998 where they are looking at the feminism in Scarecrow and Mrs. King and Lois and Clark. And it's fascinating because they basically, like, their premise when they started was that Lois and Clark was going to be further along. And by the time they finished watching both, they're like, no, turns out it's not. She basically goes from independent woman to Superman's going to save me. Whereas Amanda in Scarecrow Mrs. King goes from I'm kind of on my own trying to run my household, and but then I become an international spy and I'm basically saving them. I do want to know what you guys thought of the hair and costumes, and in particular what the headband. I don't know if you had the headband. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's the thing. I love a look. Obviously this show was not a period piece when it was made, but even still, there are some shows from the 80s that, like, are too far into, like, late 80s or, like, mid to late 80s where it's just like, oh, this is rough. Like, this was, like, a nice, fun middle. Like, I think, and also kind of going back to, like, is she a feminist or is she a good representation for feminism? Like, she feels like a real person. Like, you know, we don't have a lot of bright, big shoulders, big buttons, like super, like, what we would consider iconic 80s, like, looks. But it is still, like, I looked at it and immediately was like, well, this, what's, Wonder Years, like, you know, like you immediately know that you're in a different time just from, like, the opening still, like, from her hair and kind of, like, the colors and textures. I have an undergraduate degree in costume design, so sometimes I get really stuck on these things. But it felt more of, like, this is what the regular person was wearing and doing and living. And again, even when you have sort of, like, slice of life TV from different time periods, like, wardrobe and set can go so far in, like, you need to know that this is a suburban family and blah, blah, like, that it just, no real person owns any of these things and definitely not together. But, like, for her, I was like, okay, yeah, no, this tracks. This feels good. This feels right.
Also, can we just have a moment for everything Francine was wearing?
Francine, a queen.
Yes. With the exception, like, screamed every time she came on because I was like, oh, I want that. Oh, you look amazing. And then in the 13th episode, the amnesia episode, did you know she had amnesia in that episode? In the amnesia episode, she came on in like that pink thing that had the studs, and then oh no, and I was like, oh no, what happened?
That was the moment that the show went 280. So we were like,
that one was egregious.
And pull it back a little.
Yeah,
pull it back a little. Like the wardrobe stylist was like, I just want to try something with Francine. I feel like she could pull it off. And the actress was probably like, I don't really know, but I don't want to be a jerk about it. So fine, like I'll put it on. And like now it's a running joke on set.
Yeah, like what a mistake. But maybe not. Maybe that was a cool thing then. And I just am looking at it through my eyes and going, no, thank you. But everything else she's wearing, I'm
chef's kiss.
Yeah, perfection. Hey, Sergio, you you want to talk about the
information?
Yeah, you have some pointed information to this topic. You with an eagle eye caught who the dresser was.
So, oh geez. Okay, so the men's costumer on Scarecrow and Mrs. King is named Richard Dick Butts. Yeah, I know. Richard Dick Butts.
We laughed for 20 minutes. We're very mature.
We did. We read his obituary out loud to each other.
Yeah, that was kind of sad.
It was kind of sad, but.
Wait, this is a real person.
I have watched this show, particularly season 1. I don't know how many times I've been studying. I've been looking up cast members. I have never noticed that.
That is. I love that you took a screenshot.
He took a screenshot. Sergio is holding up a screenshot for those of whom just listening.
Dick Butts.
Dick Butts. Oh, it's B-U-T-Z. Okay, well, at least it's B-U-T-Z, right?
Right.
Wow, I mean, that person must have had a miserable childhood.
I mean, as Norbert Leo Butts, one of our favorite Broadway performers, says, if your name is Norbert Leo Butts, your only job is to not suck. Do a good job. Don't suck.
Norbert gets it.
He has a resume, though, Dick Butts. He really does. I looked him up. He also worked on Weekend at Bernie's. Like, he was booked and busy.
So, well, to that point, if your name's Dick Butts, you better be pretty good.
I'm glad you really glad you pointed that out.
Glad we brought Dick Butts to your attention.
That is fantastic. You guys did an amazing job. I'm only concerned that you liked the show. And I'm glad you did. I'm so glad. This show is on the list almost every year of like, it's got to be rebooted. It's got to be rebooted. And so many 80s shows have been rebooted that it is one of those ones you're like, okay, come on, somebody's got to figure it out. Shouldn't be that hard. I mean, it was rebooted once as Chuck, but beyond that, you know,
that's what I got like 5 minutes into it and I was like, oh, it's Chuck.
It's the role reversal Chuck. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess that happens in Chuck too, where like her being just a normal person ends up being the like information often that is needed. Just normal information is what's needed. And that, I guess that happens every once in a while in Chuck too. He also has like all the secrets of the world in his head. But
I watched Chuck as well, and that was so much fun, but I don't remember them using his normality in the same way.
I honestly would be curious to see some of the later seasons because I don't know that it would be a fun show with her being like an actual spy. Like part of the fun is that like he's supposed to be this trained professional secret agent and keeps messing up. And she is this not housewife who is able to just kind of swoop in and use like common sense. Like she's just like, how are you not getting this? And that's part of the like fun and charm is like, oh, he's sort of like too into this work / kind of too dense to get it. And she is able to be like, use your brain. Like, obviously there wasn't Google then, so she couldn't be like, have you Googled this? But that's kind of the sentiment of like, have you ever spoken to a human?
Gone to the library and pulled out an encyclopedia.
Right. So. Like, have you talked to another person?
I think I also really appreciate too. And I wonder if this changes I'd be curious if this changes in later seasons. I really appreciate that she's very adept at what she's doing, but is frazzled. Like, is babbling incessantly and is kind of freaking out about it, but like is freaking out about flying the helicopter, but is still very well flying the helicopter, because I can relate and I get that. And I'm like, thank you.
That's such a mom move too. Like moms, like if you have a good relationship with your mom, like moms are superheroes. Like you don't know how, you don't know when, you don't know whatever. You just know that if there's a problem and you take it to your mom, it's going to be fixed. Like that. And so like, sure, does she know how to fly a helicopter? No, but like if you put her in the chair, she'll figure it out. Like she can do it.
What I love is that her application of the Boy Scout knowledge was looking at the knot that tied Scarecrow up, going, I know what that knot is, and then not untying him, but about what, like her circumstances. And I was just like, oh, this is peak comedy.
Trauma brain doesn't make sense, okay?
I know what that knot is. It's impossible to untie.
You're
anyway.
Stuck.
Sorry.
Yikes.
Guess I'm going to have to fly the helicopter.
Okay. Like she knew how to untie it the whole time. She just wanted to try flying out a helicopter.
There you go.
Oh my God. All right. I am so excited that you guys have come on the show, that we have 90 TV's babies to talk about 80s TV ladies. It's super exciting. I'm excited you guys watch it together and we're able to do that. Because that is fun. Like sitting down with my sister watching 80s television was very much something that I missed when she went off to college, which actually enabled our friendship beyond sistership. She went off to college and we started writing letters to each other to talk about television shows and the new shows that were happening, because she had to go to the common room and try to get people to turn the television to certain shows, right? You had one TV in the dorm, the whole building. And you had to negotiate what it was going to be turned to. And so I was like, oh my God, you've got to watch this new show, The A-Team. And I'm writing her a letter telling her how great The A-Team is so that she will go down and fight to watch it on the common television.
Those were the days. Yeah, it's, I didn't have a television the first year, access to TV my first year in college, except for the one in the common room. So I was at the mercy of whatever anybody else wanted to watch. So yeah, I completely relate to that. But you guys are amazing. You guys really are amazing. So appreciate you. And the things that you brought up that never occurred to me, that I didn't see in quite the right way, but the same way, but I love your takes on everything. Can't wait to see what you think about additional shows as we go forward. So looking forward to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. But we will be having you back to talk about the next show that we're going to look at. And I don't know if are we allowed to talk about it now?
Oh, sure.
Sure. Okay. So after we finish our Scarecrow episodes, our next show, we're going to continue in the action romantic comedy, and we will be doing Remington Steele. And so we will be sending you some episodes of Remington to check out. It's going to be super fun. I did do some math while you guys were talking. Beverly Garland was old enough to be Kate Jackson's mother, and so a grandmother. She was 57 at the time of the show, but she was a pretty, for the 80s.
She was snatched.
May I just end this with the blessing of may we all age like she did, every single one of us here. May we continue to be that sexy.
I think that's a beautiful way to wrap this up. And I'm also going to wrap it up. She was so sexy. Her husband built her a hotel. The Beverly Garland Hotel still exists. It is in the valley.
It's on Vineland, just north of Ventura Boulevard.
That is baller.
I know that hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely driven by there.
I know that hotel. I knew Beverly Garland was an actress. I literally never put it together that the Beverly Garland Hotel was named after the actress Beverly Garland.
I think it's now just called the Garland, but for years it was literally called the Beverly Garland Hotel. So
All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
it has
you.
been so
Thank
great to
you.
have you. Can't wait to have you back. And blessings.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
So now it's time for our audiography. The websites I'm going to shout out today for you to look up for more information is the Facebook fan page, which is facebook.com/Scarecrow and Mrs. King. It has a ton of information, a lot of cool, kind of facts and photos. And the fan website, Call Me a Cab at callmeacab.com. Pretty amazing deep dive. They have scripts on that site. Very cool website for Scarecrow Mrs. King. And then the SMK-land, Scarecrow Miss King land. That's SMK-land. And that's the little sign dash.com. That site does require registration for some info, but it also has a pretty cool, a lot of information about the locations they used. The book I'm going to shout out today is called Stealing the Show: How Women Are Revolutionizing Television. This is a fun read about women creators and showrunners, and it looks at showrunners from the 1980s to 2018. I want to give a shout out to our audio engineer, Kevin Ducey, co-producer Melissa Roth, plus a shout out to our social media manager and production assistant, Megan McKiernan, who was also my assistant at 134 West. She has moved on, and I want to congratulate her on her amazing new gig. She is now a production assistant for the HBO Max, Warner Brothers, and DC TV show Titans. And we wish her well over there, and I'm really excited that she helped us out with the first few episodes. And I also want to welcome my new assistant at 134 West and our social media manager for 80s TV Ladies, Sergio Perez. Yes, he was also part of our 90s TV Babies. So it's coming full circle. And I want to also shout out Sarita's podcast. It's called In the Chaos.
Join us for the next episode of 80s TV Ladies, where we will continue our dive into Scarecrow and Mrs. King. We are excited to have a very special guest who not only worked on the show, she co-created it.
That's right, Melissa. We will be interviewing Eugenie Ross Lemming, the writer, producer, and actress, and co-creator of Scarecrow Mrs. King. I can't wait. You guys send us your questions, and we'll see if we can get them answered.
Thank you so much for listening.
And until next time, we want you to stay sexy and pretty. All right?